Hunter x Hunter is a dark psychological survival thriller set deep in the cold, isolated wilderness. The story follows a family of fur trappers, Joseph, his wife Anne, and their daughter Renee, who live alone in the forest, surviving off the land and hunting animals for their livelihood. But their quiet, difficult life takes a terrifying turn when a dangerous wolf begins attacking their traps. While Joseph sets out to hunt the beast, Anne and Renee stay behind, alone, surrounded by silence and fear. But soon, Anne realizes that something even more terrifying than a wild animal is lurking in the woods, something human, something evil. So, at the beginning of this story, we see a man who is a hunter. He's setting traps with his daughter, a kind of snare used to catch animals. At the same time, he's also removing the animals that were caught in the older traps. Their dog is with them too. The man talks to his wife, Anne, through the radio. He tells her to go to town to get some necessary supplies. There are 3 members in this family, living deep in the forest, far from the city. They make their living by selling animal skins, the ones they catch in their traps. They cook the meat for themselves and sell the hides for money. This was their only source of income, since they didn't know any other kind of work. That's why Anne's husband was teaching their daughter the same trade. However, she wasn't very skilled at it yet. While the father and daughter were checking the traps, they noticed that one of them was empty. Seeing this, the daughter said that it must have been him again. He's back. She was talking about a wolf, which tells us that this had happened before. Meanwhile, Anne goes to a store to sell the animal hides. She looks quite worried, because the prices for hides have dropped. As a result, she doesn't get enough money, not even to buy enough food. Seeing her troubled face, the shopkeeper tells her that ordinary animal skins don't fetch much. If you want more money, he says, bring me a wolf's hide. Still, Anne remains worried, thinking, where would I find a wolf's hide? She also looks longingly at the posters on the wall, advertisements for houses for rent and good jobs. From her expression, it's clear that she wishes to have a proper home and a decent job. But for some reason, she can't, and she doesn't even know how to hunt. She wanted the same thing, that we live in town instead of the forest so I can send our daughter to a good school. But because they didn't have enough money, she returned home. At home, Anne's husband was teaching their daughter how to skin animals while Anne was cooking for everyone. Even at dinner everyone was in a bad mood, because there wasn't enough food due to lack of money. When Anne's daughter says that a wolf took their catch, Anne gets very angry at her husband because he hadn't told her. She tells him to do something about the wolf, otherwise we'll starve. Then she sends their daughter inside and starts arguing with her husband again. Her husband says that wolves enjoy eating girls, so maybe it took a girl or some other animal. But Anne says she thinks the wolf is coming because of our family. It knows it can find trapped, easy prey here without much effort. She says she wants to go to the police station and report it, but her husband refuses, saying, "Don't worry, I'll catch it myself tomorrow morning." That wasn't her only worry. Pointing to the same advertisement poster, and says, "How long can we get by like this? If I get a good job somewhere and earn money, we'll have a better life." Her husband refuses, saying, "We don't know anything except hunting, we can't do anything else." After that they both go outside, where Anne again tries to make him understand, "Look, you aren't thinking about our daughter's future. This life is the one you chose and I accepted because of you, but our daughter didn't get a choice. Let her choose what she wants. She should be worrying about studies now, not about wolves and hunting. Living in the forest isn't something people usually do, it's not exactly wise." But even after Anne tries to explain this, her husband just doesn't understand. He says, "We live here, don't we? And so will our next generations. No matter what happens, we will never leave this forest." The next morning, when he goes out to hunt the wolf, his daughter insists on coming along. He finally agrees to take her, something Anne doesn't like at all. So she talks to him over the radio. He tells her, "As soon as I sense the wolf nearby and the hunt begins, I'll send her back." And that moment comes soon enough. He spots the wolf's footprints and realizes it must be close. After explaining everything to his daughter, he sends her back home, telling her that he'll return by nightfall. The daughter starts heading back, but even though her father told her not to be afraid, the frightening sounds coming from the forest make her panic. And, too, was feeling the same fear. While returning home after fetching water from the river, she feels as if someone is following her, which makes her anxious. Meanwhile, the same thing is happening to their daughter. She's terrified. And somehow manages to reach home, but her daughter doesn't make it back. She sits down somewhere in the forest, too scared to move. Anne's husband, on the other hand, finally spots the wolf and quickly fires a shot at it. But from the looks of it, the wolf didn't die. The sound of the gunshot reaches his daughter's ears, giving her the courage to start moving again. After firing the shot, Anne's husband goes to check, but the wolf is gone, meaning it escaped. Then he sees something that shocks him terribly. And that thing was, a girl's severed hand, which the wolf was gnawing on, was what he saw. He crossed the road to the other side of the forest and went further. The sight there left him stunned and terrified. Scattered around were the mutilated bodies of girls, cut up ruthlessly and arranged in a circular pattern. That couldn't have been the work of a wolf, and he understood then that besides the wolf there was a human killer roaming the forest who was doing this, murdering girls in that brutal way. He panicked at once, realizing his own family was now in danger, because 2 women lived in his house. He felt confident he could handle the wolf, but dealing with this dangerous murderer would not be easy. He came home and sat quietly, thinking only about that. He barely slept or ate. He didn't tell his family anything so they wouldn't be frightened, and resolved to act himself to protect them. The next morning, when Anne woke up, her husband was gone. He had gone back to the place where he'd seen the girls' bodies. He had told Anne that if he needed to stay all night searching for the creature he would, so she should not worry, but in truth he wasn't looking for the wolf, he was hunting the killer. When Anne and her daughter were by the river, the daughter noticed their dog was missing and went to look for it. At that moment the same wolf appeared and started moving toward them. Anne screamed loudly, the first idea that came to her mind, and it worked, the wolf fled. The 2 of them ran straight home without wasting time, but their dog had been left outside, so Anne grabbed a gun and went to search for it. She found the dog, but it was dead. The wolf had finished it off. Anne was heartbroken, but when she returned she lied to her daughter, saying the dog hadn't been found yet and that they would look for it when her father came back. She didn't tell her daughter about the dog's death so the child wouldn't be frightened or feel her life was in danger. Here we finally learn why the movie is called Hunter x Hunter. Because this hunting family, the real hunters, is caught between 2 predators who both threaten their lives. One is the wolf, and the other is the killer. Morning arrives, but Anne's husband still hasn't returned, nor has there been any call from him. The mother and daughter go out again to check their traps, and once again one of their catches is missing. There, Anne finds a ring, and the moment she sees it, she begins to tremble. It must belong to one of the girls the wolf had attacked. Terrified, Anne heads straight to the police station to report the wolf, hoping they'll capture it. Meanwhile, some police officers and their superior are returning to the station with a dead man's body when they spot an abandoned vehicle on the road. They look at it carefully but don't think much of it and continue to the station, where Anne is already waiting. Anne tells them everything, but they respond that nothing can be done. Your area doesn't come under our jurisdiction, they say. And we can't go after the wolf either, it hasn't done anything wrong. It's not human, it's just an animal. It's doing what it naturally does. You live in the forest, you hunt, so the fault is entirely yours, not the wolf's. If any action is taken, it will be against you people, not the wolf. Since she gets no help, and buys a little food and returns home. She buries her dog and then kills a young deer to bring back. It was wrong, but she had to do something to keep them from starving. Her husband was still missing, the wolf was still out there, and the food was almost gone, so whatever needed to be done, and had to do it herself, she and her daughter together skin the deer, then cook and eat it. That night, while they're eating, some static suddenly comes through the radio. and tries speaking, but the other side's voice isn't clear. Later, when the two are asleep, they suddenly wake up. There's someone screaming in the forest. When they go to check, they discover it isn't Anne's husband, but a stranger, badly injured and calling for help. Anne sends her daughter back home, lays the wounded man on a sled, and brings him inside, fearing that the wolf might be nearby. Upon checking him, she finds a radio in his possession, and his leg is in terrible condition. That night passes somehow, and the next morning, when Anne's daughter comes near him. When the girl comes closer, the wounded man suddenly opens his eyes, startling her. Terrified, she quickly calls for her mother. At his request, Anne gives him some water to drink and stitches up the wound on his leg. Watching this, Anne's daughter feels uneasy and says, "Dad told us never to trust a stranger." Anne replies, "Look at him, he's badly hurt. And if your dad were here, he would have helped him too." Meanwhile, the police chief was once again driving back toward the forest area when he noticed that the same car was still parked in the exact same spot. Realizing it had been there for 2 days, he got out of his vehicle to look around. Seeing no one nearby, he wrote down the car's license number. Back at the cabin, the injured man wakes up and tells them his name is Lou. And asks him, "Not many people come to this forest. What were you doing here?" Lou answers, "That's what I do, I'm a photographer. I came here to take pictures of the forest, but my car broke down on the way, so I started walking deeper into the woods. Then someone attacked me, maybe it was a wolf, I didn't see it clearly. And the car that's been standing there all this time, that's mine." Lou's condition was so bad that he needed to be taken to a hospital, but with the wolf lurking around, it wasn't safe to leave. If the wolf showed up, they wouldn't be able to escape. Still, Anne and her daughter tried to help him to the car, but Lou screamed in pain along the way, forcing them to return to the cabin. Now, the mother and daughter spread pieces of meat laced with poison outside, set up traps, and lit a fire nearby to keep the wolf away. Meanwhile, the police chief was deep in thought. People had been disappearing for quite some time now, especially young women, and the pattern hadn't stopped. His shift was almost over, with just an hour left, but he decided to go check that car one more time, which turned out to be his biggest mistake. As he followed the tracks leading away from the vehicle, his foot suddenly got caught in a trap. When he struggled to free himself, his hand got caught in another. It was clear now, he was completely trapped, unable to move. And those traps were definitely the ones set by Anne's husband, the killer. To catch the killer, but the poor police chief ended up being the one caught in the trap, meanwhile, and stood ready with her gun, fully alert. But even after the entire night passed, neither her husband nor the wolf returned. At the police station the next morning, when another officer arrived, she listened to a voice message from the police chief's wife, saying, "My husband didn't come home last night." The officer tried contacting him over the radio, but there was no response. So she decided to go out herself to look for him back in the forest, and had also started to worry about her husband. Taking a map, she set out to find him. Along the way, she found a rabbit caught in one of his traps. Even though she didn't want to, she had to kill it to end its suffering, and doing so made her feel miserable, because this wasn't who she was. Just then, some static came through on her radio again, so she continued moving forward. But what she saw next left her in total shock. Lying there was her husband's dead body. Seeing him like that, Anne broke down completely, crying uncontrollably. And then everything became clear to her. Her husband hadn't been killed by the wolf, he'd been murdered by Lou, the same man who had killed all those other girls. Anne's husband must have discovered Lou's secret and tried to stop him, but Lou killed him and escaped. Still, her husband had managed to injure Lou badly before dying. But Anne, not knowing any of this, had brought Lou home and saved his life, caring for the man who murdered her husband. The realization hit her like a thunderbolt. Horrified, she rushed back home as fast as she could, because she had made another mistake. She had left her daughter alone with Lou. Meanwhile, the female officer reached the area and began searching for the police chief. Hearing faint sounds, she fired a few warning shots, and soon found him trapped. She immediately called for backup, but it was too late. The chief died before he could be rescued. And quietly entered her house and saw her daughter safe and sound, peacefully sleeping. But Lou, the killer, wasn't there. He was hiding behind the door. Suddenly, he attacked Anne. During the struggle, Anne's gun went off, and the noise woke her daughter, who ran in, but by then it was too late. Lou had already knocked and unconscious. Back in the forest, the police arrived, but before they could free their chief from the trap, he took his last breath. The officers spotted more footprints and began following them deeper into the woods. When Anne finally regains consciousness, she finds herself in Lou's truck. He asks Anne for the truck keys, but she replies, "Only on one condition, first tell me where my daughter is." Lou doesn't answer that. Instead, he says coldly, "None of this would have happened if your husband had just minded his own business. To keep my secret safe, I had to kill him, and now, I'll kill you too." After saying this, he burns all his belongings and comes toward Anne, trying to assault her. But Anne seizes the right moment. She tricks him and traps his face in one of the snares. Then she frees herself and attacks him with a sharp object, knocking him unconscious. She goes into the next room, and breaks down completely, crying uncontrollably, because there lies the body of her daughter. The film doesn't show it directly, but it's clear what happened. The deranged killer, the beast disguised as a man, had murdered her child too. Now Anne swears she will not spare him. She'll avenge her husband and her daughter no matter what. She ties Lou up with a rope, puts headphones on him, and plays loud music, and then begins skinning him alive, just like an animal. Because, in her eyes, that's exactly what he was, an animal in human form. Within moments, she flays the skin off his entire body, and finally even from his face, causing blood to gush everywhere. The sight is horrifying. Lou looks monstrous, barely recognizable as human. By the time the police arrive outside, Anne has already finished her revenge. She walks out carrying Lou's skin, throws it in front of the officers, leaving them in utter shock. When the police go inside to check, they find Lou still alive, but barely. His condition is horrific. He's moments from death, looking more like a mutilated creature than a man. Outside, Anne sits silently, listening to the music through the same headphones, until memories of her family flash before her eyes. She quietly takes the headphones off, and with that, the film ends. As the horror unfolds, and discovers the unthinkable truth, the man she rescued, Lou, is not a victim but a sadistic serial killer responsible for her husband's death and the disappearance of several women. When she finds her daughter brutally murdered, grief and rage consume her completely. And takes brutal revenge. She captures Lou, hangs him, and skins him alive, treating him like the very animal she once hunted. By the time the police arrive, it's too late. Lou is still barely alive, a bloody, skinless shell of a man. And steps outside in silence, covered in blood but emptied of emotion. She sits, listening to music through the headphones, as if trying to drown out the screams and memories. Finally, she removes the headphones, the last sound fades, and the film ends in haunting silence.